The Iron Tide. The Vorthan Imperium had no equal. For 3 millennia, their obsidian warships carved through the cosmos like a plague of darkness, leaving only silence where civilizations once flourished. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were erasers, methodically removing entire species from existence, as one might delete unwanted files from a computer. Supreme Overlord Korthax stood on the command bridge of the Devastator, his flagship that stretched 20 kilometers from bow to stern. His 4 arms crossed behind his back as he watched the latest victory unfold on the holographic display. The Andromeda Coalition, an alliance of 17 advanced species, was crumbling under the Vorthan assault. Status report, Korthax commanded, his voice resonating through the bridge like grinding stone. Andromeda Prime's defenses have fallen. Supreme One, reported Commander Zaxthor. Their quantum shields lasted 17 minutes longer than predicted, but the outcome was never in doubt. Korthax's mandibles clicked in what passed for satisfaction among his kind. The Vorthans were silicon-based lifeforms, their bodies resembling living crystal sculptures that refracted light into deadly patterns. They had evolved on a world where survival meant absolute dominance, and they had carried that philosophy to the stars. "Begin the cleansing protocol," Korthax ordered. "Leave nothing but stellar dust." The Vorthan fleet, comprising thousands of vessels, began to glow with an eerie purple light. This was their ultimate weapon, the void cannons that could destabilize matter at the subatomic level. Entire planets would simply cease to exist, their atoms scattered across space-time. As the Andromeda Coalition's homeworld began to blur and fade from reality, desperate transmissions flooded the communication channels. Pleas for mercy, offers of surrender, promises of servitude, all fell on deaf ears. The Vorthans had heard such entreaties countless times before. They never listened. Another galaxy cleansed, Zaxthor announced as the last traces of the coalition vanished. "Shall we proceed to the next target, Supreme One?" Korthax was about to respond when an unusual alert chimed through the bridge. Junior Officer Vexa, stationed at the long-range sensors, straightened in surprise. "Supreme One, we're detecting an anomaly in Sector 9. "Specify," Korthax demanded, turning his crystalline form toward the sensor station. "A single vessel of unknown configuration has appeared at the edge of our territory. It's small, Supreme One, barely 500 meters in length." Laughter rippled through the bridge crew. A ship that size was nothing more than a shuttle by Vorthan standards. Their smallest destroyers were 10 times that length. "Origin?" Korthax asked, more out of procedure than concern. Vexa manipulated the controls, her fingers dancing across the crystalline interface. "The ship's design doesn't match any known species in our database." "Wait." She paused, double-checking her readings. "I'm detecting organic compounds. Carbon-based life signatures." "Impossible," Zaxthor scoffed. "We eliminated all carbon-based civilizations in that sector 800 years ago." "Nevertheless, the readings are confirmed," Vexa insisted. "The vessel is transmitting an identification beacon. It calls itself Aurora. The crew identifies as humans." The bridge fell silent. Humans. The name was unfamiliar, which was unusual. The Vorthan database contained information on every species they had encountered in their 3,000-year campaign of galactic cleansing. "Plot an intercept course," Korthax ordered. "If these humans have somehow evaded our notice, we shall correct that oversight immediately." The Vorthan fleet adjusted its heading, the massive warships turning with surprising grace for their size. As they approached Sector 9, more detailed scans of the Aurora became available. "Primitive technology," reported the tactical officer. "Fusion reactors, basic shield generators, projectile weapons. They pose no threat, Supreme One." Korthax's form pulsed with contempt. "Then their destruction will serve as a brief amusement. Commander Zaxthor, take your squadron and eliminate this insect." Zaxthor saluted with 2 of his arms while the other 2 began inputting commands. His squadron. 50 destroyers, each capable of obliterating a moon, broke formation and accelerated toward the human vessel. On the Aurora, Captain Sarah Chen stood at her command station, her expression calm despite the approaching threat. Her crew of 30 worked with quiet efficiency, no trace of panic in their movements. "Captain, the Vorthen squadron will be in weapons range in 2 minutes," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant James Parker. "Understood," Chen replied, her fingers dancing across her personal console. "All hands, prepare for quantum lock. Remember, we get one shot at this." The human ship was indeed small compared to the Vorthen vessels, but its design was unlike anything in known space. Where Vorthen ships were angular and aggressive, the Aurora was smooth and organic in its curves. Its hull seemed to shimmer with an oil-slick iridescence that confused sensor readings. Zaxthor's squadron closed in, weapons charging. "Attention, human vessel," he broadcast. "You have entered Vorthen space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Chen's response was calm and measured. "Commander Zaxthor of the Vorthen Imperium, I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earthship Aurora. We're not here to surrender. We're here to end your reign of terror." The audacity of the statement left Zaxthor momentarily speechless. This tiny ship, this primitive vessel, dared to threaten the Vorthen Imperium. "You speak madness, human. We have destroyed entire galaxies. What can one small ship do against our might?" "You're about to find out," Chen replied. "All hands, initiate quantum lock. Target their command ship." What happened next defied 3,000 years of Vorthen military doctrine. The Aurora didn't power up weapons or ray shields. Instead, it seemed to unfold. The ship's hull rippled and transformed, revealing arrays of crystalline structures that pulsed with impossible energies. "What in the void?" Zaxthor began, but never finished. A beam of pure white light lanced out from the Aurora, striking Zaxthor's destroyer. But instead of the expected explosion or hull breach, something far more terrifying occurred. The Vorthen ship began to change color, its obsidian hull turning translucent, then transparent, then "It's phasing," screamed the sensor officer. "The entire ship is phasing out of our reality." Zaxthor's destroyer, a kilometer-long instrument of death that had survived 100 battles, simply ceased to exist in normal spacetime. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but shifted into a quantum state that removed it from the conventional universe. The remaining Vorthen ships opened fire immediately, their void cannons unleashing energies that could unmake matter itself. But the Aurora moved like nothing they had ever encountered. It didn't dodge or weave. It seemed to exist in multiple positions simultaneously, their targeting computers unable to achieve a lock. More beams of white light emerged from the human ship, each one finding its mark with impossible precision. Vorthen destroyers vanished one by one, phased out of reality by technology that violated everything the Imperium understood about physics. On the Devastator's bridge, Supreme Overlord Corthax watched in disbelief as his squadron was systematically erased. Not destroyed. Erased. Their life signs didn't fade. They simply stopped existing in any detectable form. "Impossible," he growled, his crystalline form pulsing with rage. "What manner of weapon is this?" "Supreme One," Vexa reported, her voice trembling. "I'm detecting quantum fluctuations unlike anything in our database. The humans aren't using conventional weapons. They're manipulating the fundamental structure of spacetime itself." As the last ship of Zaxthor's squadron vanished into quantum uncertainty, the Aurora turned toward the main Vorthen fleet. On its hull, previously hidden weapons arrays began to glow with that same impossible white light. Captain Chen's voice echoed across all Vorthen communication channels. "Supreme Overlord Corthax, humanity has watched from the shadows as you've destroyed countless civilizations. We've studied your methods, your weapons, your complete lack of mercy. And we've prepared. You are one ship," Corthax roared. "We are thousands. Your primitive species will burn like all the others." "You're wrong about 2 things," Chen replied calmly. "First, we're not primitive. We've simply been very, very patient. And second, she paused, and when she spoke again, there was steel in her voice. Who said we're just one ship? Across the Vorthan fleet's sensor network, alerts began screaming. Quantum signatures matching the Aurora were appearing throughout Vorthan space, not just in this system, but in every major stronghold of the Imperium. Hundreds of human ships, each one small and seemingly insignificant, but armed with technology that could phase entire fleets out of existence. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Vorthan Imperium faced an enemy they couldn't simply overpower. Their void cannons, their massive fleets, their strategy of overwhelming force, all of it was useless against an opponent who had studied them from afar and developed the perfect counter to their methods. Supreme Overlord Korthax stood on his bridge, watching his invincible empire face its first real challenge. The humans hadn't come to conquer. They had come to correct what they saw as an imbalance in the universe, and they had brought weapons that didn't destroy. They simply removed their targets from reality entirely. The turning point. The Aurora hung in space like a pearl against velvet, its hull still shimmering with quantum energies. Around it, the void where 50 Vorthan destroyers had been now held only the faint traces of exotic particles, ghost echoes of ships forced into quantum uncertainty. Supreme Overlord Korthax stared at the tactical display, his crystalline form flickering with barely controlled rage. 3,000 years of victories, of absolute dominance. And now this, a species they had never even catalogued had appeared from nowhere, with weapons that defied comprehension. All ships, converge on the human vessel, Korthax commanded. Overwhelm them with numbers. They cannot phase 5,000 ships simultaneously. But even as the order went out, more alerts flooded the command center. Human ships were appearing throughout Vorthan space, at shipyards, mining facilities, command stations. Each appearance was preceded by the same quantum signature, as if the vessels were stepping sideways from another dimension. Captain Sarah Chen stood calmly on the Aurora's bridge as the massive Vorthan fleet began to converge. Her executive officer, Commander Yuki Tanaka, looked at the tactical display with concern. Captain, they're bringing everything they have. Our quantum capacitors can't handle that many targets at once. Chen smiled slightly. They still don't understand, Yuki. We're not here to fight their fleet. We're here to end their empire. Initiate Phase 2. Across human space, in hidden facilities on rogue planets and asteroid bases, massive quantum generators came online. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were reality anchors designed to stabilize space-time in very specific ways. On every Vorthan world, in every system they controlled, reality began to shift. Not violently, not destructively, but with the subtle precision of a master locksmith working tumblers. The quantum-locked weapons weren't just removing ships from reality. They were rewriting the fundamental constants that allowed Vorthan technology to function. Supreme One. Vexa's voice cracked with panic. Our void cannons, they're not responding. The quantum field dynamics have changed. Our weapons can't achieve subatomic destabilization. Korthax whirled to face her. Explain. The humans, they're not just using quantum weapons. They're altering the underlying physics of our space. They're changing the rules of reality itself. On the Aurora, Chen opened a channel to the Vorthan flagship. Supreme Overlord, you've spent 3 millennia believing that might makes right. That the power to destroy grants the authority to judge who deserves to exist. Humanity disagrees. You dare lecture us? Korthax snarled. We have brought order to chaos, eliminated the weak to make room for the strong. You've brought nothing but silence, Chen replied. Dead worlds spinning in empty space, entire histories erased. Cultures, arts, philosophies, all reduced to atomic dust. We've watched from our distant corner of the galaxy, and we've judged you as you've judged others. The Vorthan fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers, found itself helpless. Their weapons, designed to unmake matter, simply stopped working. The physics they relied on no longer operated as expected. Ships tried to enter hyperspace only to find the dimensional barriers had shifted. Communication systems that used quantum entanglement found their paired particles no longer responded. But here's the difference between us, Chen continued. We're not going to destroy you. We're not going to erase your species from existence. We're simply going to remove your ability to harm others. The quantum cascade reached its crescendo. Across the galaxy, Vorthan technology began to fail, not through destruction, but through a fundamental incompatibility with the new quantum constants humanity had imposed. Their mighty warships became inert hulks. Their planet-killing weapons became useless sculptures of exotic matter. On the bridge of the Devastator, emergency lighting flickered as primary systems failed. Korthax found himself standing in a ship that had become little more than a metal shell floating in space, the most powerful vessel in the known galaxy, reduced to scrap by an enemy that hadn't fired a single destructive shot. "How?" he asked, his voice hollow with disbelief. "How did you do this?" Chen's image appeared on the one functioning screen. "We learned from you, actually. You showed us that advanced technology could reshape reality. So we developed our own approach. While you perfected destruction, we perfected protection. Our quantum-locked weapons don't destroy. They selectively edit reality to prevent destruction. You've doomed us," Korthax said. "Without our technology, we cannot survive. Our worlds depend on it." "No," Chen replied. "We've freed you. Your life support systems still function. Your agricultural systems still work. Everything you need to survive and thrive remains. Only your weapons, your tools of conquest and genocide, have been affected. You can live, grow, even prosper. You just can't hurt anyone else." The implication struck Korthax like a physical blow. The Vorthan Imperium hadn't just been defeated, it had been fundamentally transformed. They would survive, but as something entirely different from what they had been. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why show mercy to those who showed none?" "Because," Chen said, "humanity believes in something you never understood. Redemption. Change. The possibility that even the darkest soul can find a different path. Your empire ends today, Supreme Overlord, but your species has a chance to begin something new." Across the galaxy, the scene repeated itself. Vorthan fleets drifted powerless. Their worlds, suddenly cut off from their military might, faced a new reality. Subject species long held in check began to stir. The iron grip of the Imperium loosened, then released entirely. Humanity's ships, those small vessels that had seemed so insignificant, took up positions throughout former Vorthan space, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They would ensure the transition was peaceful, that revenge didn't replace oppression, that the galaxy could heal from 3 millennia of wounds. On Earth, in a modest command center hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral David Kumar received reports from across the galaxy. The plan had worked perfectly. Years of careful observation, of developing technology in secret, of waiting for the exact right moment, it had all paid off. "Status report," Kumar requested. "All Vorthan military assets have been successfully neutralized," reported his aide. "No casualties on either side. Subject species are beginning to establish provisional governments. Our peacekeeping forces are maintaining order." Kumar nodded with satisfaction. "And the Vorthans themselves?" "Adapting, sir. Several worlds have already reached out for diplomatic contact. They want to understand what happened and what comes next." "What comes next," Kumar said quietly, "is hope. For the first time in 3,000 years, this galaxy has hope." The Aurora returned to Earth to a hero's welcome, but Captain Chen felt no triumph. Standing on the observation deck, looking out at the stars, she thought about the magnitude of what they had done. They had ended an empire without taking a single life. They had rewritten the rules of an entire galaxy. Commander Tanaka joined her at the viewport. "Thinking deep thoughts, Captain. Just wondering if we did the right thing," Chen admitted. "We changed the fundamental nature of their civilization." Do we have that right? They would have destroyed us without a second thought, Tanaka pointed out. True, but we're not them. That's the whole point. Chen sighed. I suppose time will tell if we've truly helped the galaxy or just replaced one form of control with another. In the following months, something remarkable happened. The Vorthans, stripped of their military might, began to discover other aspects of their culture that had been suppressed for millennia. Art began to flourish. Philosophy emerged. They started to communicate with species they had once sought to destroy. The galaxy, free from the shadow of the Vorthan Imperium, entered a new age. Civilizations that had hidden in dark corners of space emerged. Trade routes opened. Alliances formed. And humanity, the species that had ended 3,000 years of terror with precision rather than violence, found itself looked to as mediators and peacekeepers. The Vorthan Empire had fallen not to a superior force, but to a superior idea. They had believed that strength meant destruction. Humanity had proven that true strength lay in the ability to protect, to preserve, and to change the rules of the game entirely. In his crystalline palace on the Vorthan homeworld, former Supreme Overlord Korthax stood before a window, watching the sunrise. His military titles were meaningless now, his fleets silent and still. But something else stirred within him, something he had no name for yet. A human delegation was scheduled to arrive soon, to discuss the future. For the first time in his long life, Korthax faced that future not as a conqueror, but as something else. Perhaps, he thought, as a student. The galaxy had been freed from the iron tide of Vorthan rule. But more importantly, the Vorthans themselves had been freed from the prison of their own making. The weapons were silent. The killing had stopped. And in that silence, new possibilities whispered of what tomorrow might bring. Humanity had done something thought impossible. They had defeated an empire not through superior firepower, but through superior wisdom. They had ended a reign of terror, not with terror of their own. The stars shone brighter that night, no longer dimmed by the smoke of burning worlds. The galaxy drew its first free breath in 3 millennia, and somewhere in the vastness of space, the Aurora continued its patrol, a small ship that had changed everything, guardian of a peace born from the ashes of empire. The age of destruction was over. The age of redemption had begun.